Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Bristol Town Council meeting of January 31st, 2018. If you could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Welcome. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council. The first item on this evening's agenda is the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Next item is a submission of minutes of previous meetings, items A1 and A2.
Motion to approve?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item C1. This is the second reading for adoption of Ordinance 2018-01. This is an amendment to the taxation portion of the town code to allow for a volunteer firefighter EMS tax incentive program. This is the second reading for adoption.
Motion to approve the second reading for adoption?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
I have discussion, if I could, Mr.
Please.
Chairman. So I'm somewhat concerned as it's written with the dates that are laid out and the timing of it. In essence, the way it's written out, it's never going to exist. We're saying it's being adopted this month. However, the first time we look at where everyone lies is January of 2019. And then it says it's sunsetting in February of 2019. So I don't quite understand the flow.
July.
Or July of 2019.
It's effective July 1st of 2018, and then it expires July 1st of 2019. So it's a year, in a sense, to see how it works.
Yeah, so I'm wondering what the thought process is behind that. And I think we should take decisive action to do this, but also I think it allows, because the maximum is up to $2,500, it allows to adjust the amount. I think we should be looking more at, in years in the future, how much it is, not whether we do it or not. So I think we should reconsider the July 2019 cutoff date.
Mr. Solicitor, is that a substantive change? Does that require first and second reading to make an adjustment?
No.
So Andy, what's the proposal? If there is,
well, I think that section is to be striked altogether. If my colleagues if that's too substantive, we should maybe talk about a date of at least 5 years into the future.
So it's the expiration date. So you just,
the expiration date.
So
yeah.
you're talking about just striking that completely out, or just
Yep.
changing it to 2023?
2023. My preference would be to strike it out altogether.
As long as we have the effect date, you're just wondering about the latter date of the year, and you want to put it out.
I don't want it to end.
Yeah, okay.
I don't think anybody would want it to end.
No.
I think it would be like...
No.
Your point would be as to whether it's working or whether we need to make adjustments, which we could do either way, whether it was that date in there or not. Because it can be revisited any time anyway.
Yeah. So, Mike, again, anything that far out is not substantive?
No, I think as Mary just said, the council has the power to change an ordinance at any
Sure.
time.
Yeah.
I think the thinking behind the date was you wanted to see what the impact was over a period of year. You were looking for the retention of volunteer firefighters, the cost to the budget, and that type of thing, and that you would look at it again. But, I mean, if you wanted to change that date, you could tonight. You could make it 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever.
But you could take it out still as an amendment.
You could
right?
also take it out completely if you wanted to.
What's the council thought?
I just have a question for the
Sure,
Chief, Chairman.
please.
Chief, I wanted you to weigh in on how do you feel about changing it to a couple years or maybe even further? Because we're going to be doing a staggered, correct?
Sure.
And
So
then it's going to...
The program in itself is self-evaluating. So every year, you're going to be able to see by the numbers and the data that's provided whether it's working or not, whether we're seeing an increase in numbers, whether we're seeing a decrease in numbers, both fiscally and both in manpower alone. So the program itself is going to self-evaluate every single year you do it. And as the solicitor had stated, it's the council's prerogative. If we see that that is not working at any time, we can certainly look at that ordinance and make changes as necessary when that comes into play. There is one other section in here that, as we go into budget season, I've been thinking about it more and more, is that it deems, and I don't think this would be substantial as far as a change, but the reporting period is defined as the calendar year, 2018, which is subsection H. And I think it would be easier basically to put the program in a fiscal year timeframe, July 1 to June 30th. There's an application period for the personnel to apply for this. And then by September, October, I actually have a number well in advance of the budget season. So that number is available to you well in advance of going into the budget season. So we're able to make adjustments and decisions and thoughts on funding at that point well in advance, rather than
Seems
trying to
appropriate.
do it all really quick in January through March.
So it would say instead of the calendar year, you change calendar to fiscal?
Yeah, you could utilize that.
And it would be fiscal 2019 is what we would be in, right?
Correct.
Going into?
Correct.
Which would be this July 1st coming up, right?
Correct.
So we would just have to amend those two?
So you have to say, you say on or before January 31st of each year, commencing with 2019. So you would say, well, we could leave that, because as long as we get it sometime before the 31st, like
Correct.
whenever the administrator starts to do their budget.
Yeah, the
you know.
intent of the fiscal year is so that we're not rushing, trying to put numbers
Right.
together, and then the
Right.
assessor has to validate and go through that process. So we'll be ahead by 6 months at least with the numbers, and be able to look at it from all perspectives, budgeting as well as
I'm just
operational.
saying for the purpose of that sentence, like, rather, are you
think-
suggesting changing it by like October 30th, or just leave it because you will be needing to speak to the administrator anyway, and, ongoing discussion about this as the program goes forward, that these dates could be left in there?
I think you could leave those dates in there, because
Yeah.
we'll have the information
Right,
well in
right, you have
advance,
it
and
earlier, right.
that's just a hard
Right.
deadline.
Yeah, I think that's okay.
See, I know that our discussion included the sunset clause, and I do believe that the sunset clause that is currently in there is a bit prohibitive. I think that's a nice way to put it. But I do think that a sunset clause is very appropriate, because I think building in a review time for the council and public hearing is very appropriate, but I don't think it should happen that that quickly. So I don't know what my colleagues' thoughts are, but I think I'm okay with a 5-year on this, because I do agree that this is the first step. So to remind everybody, there was state legislation that changed to allow this conversation, and then this ordinance is local legislation, if you will. And then the next step is, of course, how it's implemented, what metrics are necessary to show its success, what are we shooting for. We all know what we're shooting for, which is, of course, greater participation. What is that defined as? All of those things. We need to work through that, but this allows us to do that. So I think I'm absolutely fine with a couple of years out, up to 5. What's my colleagues' thoughts?
It's fine with me.
Fine with me. If we amend the motion, then
So how about 5 years out? And that's enough, that's a good time to see success. And notice I didn't say failure.
Well,
So-
I think 5 years is certainly a good time for the evaluation. I mean, as I said, it's going to evaluate every year. I don't know if I would term it as a sunset clause, or if I would.
Well, the sunset clause means that we must review it, and that's a very important next step. And there's, in fact, we have another sunset clause that we're reviewing a little later on in the agenda. It's a great way to make sure that success is being found, and if it isn't, to make changes. So,
But I will say that, and I don't know if there's a reason for the wording, but it says expiration date, but I mean, in legislation, you do see the word sunset. Like, so, I mean, probably has it's the same impact, it's the same effect.
Yeah.
You can change at any time. I'm just like pointing that out, because we're saying sunsetting, and, and
It's the
says-
same, sunset expiration.
Yeah.
Same.
an example of sunset was the sidewalk use ordinance. We put a sunset clause on that to require dialogue again, to make sure that surrounding neighbors, businesses had an opportunity to speak for or against, have open dialogue about it, and that did not sunset. We moved forward on that. This, I don't believe any of us are looking, everybody, lots of fire department here, welcome. I don't think anybody is looking for failure on this, so I don't believe that that's an issue, but I do believe there's value in reviewing this, and as Councilman Tiska said, pushing it out a bit, I think is very appropriate. Does anybody, Andy, I didn't want to cut you off. I'm fine with 5 years, and I have no objection to that.
No, 5 is, I'm not.
So my first preference is to strike it, but regarding 5 years, I think Mary's point about language is important. And I think looking back at this in 5 years, when it is being reviewed and the language is expiration or even sunset, I think it sets, at least it seems to set what our intention is, that this should be considered to go away. I'm wondering, Mr. Solicitor, if you can change the language to be something more positive, similar to what our chairman says regarding what happens in 5 years. Something to the effect that on a date 5 years from now, so 20,
Would you say like
25.
reauthorize, like in 2023, we
We'll be
reauthorize
looked at it.
based on the data?
Yeah, just look at the success of this program, and based on its success, it'll be revisited or renewed, maybe. We want to look at renewing it, not expiring it in 5 years.
Consideration arose by any other name, right?
So I think it's a little bit of a language thing, but I think in 5 years it'd be good to communicate that our intent today is for it to be looked at, reviewed, and renewed, not looked at to be taken away or expired.
We're just putting you on the spot there, Mike.
So spin something else. Give me some
I'm not
language,
sure that any
Mr.
legislation
Solicitor.
that has a sunset provision ever
We can
sunsets
call
it.
it reauthorization date, and we can say this ordinance and all of its benefits
Very excellent.
must be reauthorized on July 1, 2023.
Perfect,
Perfect.
perfect.
Can I have a motion?
So
Can
moved.
I just make one quick thing on the
Certainly.
date? Because July 1, wouldn't we say maybe January 1, because we'd be doing that budget for that year?
We could do January 1.
Yeah, I think it would
That
make more
probably makes
sense, because you'd be doing that.
So, Mary, would you restate that, please?
Well, just what Mike said, but instead of July 1, I would say January 1, 2023, because before you go into the budget for that year, like, you wouldn't want to not,
It's an excellent point.
you know.
It's an excellent
And
point.
so here's what M would read. Reauthorization date, this ordinance and all of its benefits must be reauthorized on January 1, 2003, period.
Okay.
So
23.
So,
Oh.
before that motion comes across, so there's a motion and a second on the floor. So that needs to be either rescinded or amended.
Well,
I would like to amend it,
okay.
amend it.
Okay?
Okay.
With all
We have
the,
the H2,
all the-
The
H
two
and I.
amendments,
Two
the two
amendments.
amendments are H, the reporting period now reads the fiscal year 2019 shall be deemed the initial reporting period, and M, reauthorization date, this ordinance and all of its benefits must be reauthorized on January 1, 2023.
Now, does that
So
23
moved.
give us...
but one second, if you would. So there's a motion, so that's your motion?
I'll second
Amended?
that,
And there's a second?
yeah.
Go ahead.
Does that 23 give us 4 tax cycles or 5?
That would be 4. I believe.
Sounds like 4.
So if we could change that to 24, it'd be great, I think. If we might consider that amendment.
We'll just-
I honestly think I'm okay with it. I don't think we need to, I think that's a lot of time to make sure that success is being found, and if not success, then what needs to be changed to find success? For myself. My colleagues?
I don't have a problem.
I don't think it really matters,
Fine.
because we can change it any time. And I think
Exactly
at every
right.
budget year, we're going to be reviewing this, so when the chief comes in, the department, this is going to be a part of your budget. And, I mean, and we're going to be, I don't know if it's your budget or the tax assessors, but somebody's budget.
Yeah.
And we'll be looking at it, so, I mean, it's going to be reviewed every year anyway. I think the point of not making a rash decision to get rid of something, you need to have, not that anybody doesn't want to, because we're so grateful to have volunteer department that I'm very happy that we can do something for the volunteers. But I'm just saying that you don't want to make a decision about keeping or not keeping something until you have all the data. So you need a few years, but every year it's going to be potentially tweaked anyway.
And to the fact that we could change it anytime we want.
Right.
I mean, it's...
So, I mean,
I think these are good steps.
So to me, is that date doesn't, if it's 23, 24, it doesn't really,
Okay.
if
So,
I'm alive at 23.
is there any other discussion in regards to that? Okay, so we have a motion and a second on the floor with those amendments. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? There you go.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for coming
Thank
and for your service.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next item, Mr. Chairman, members of the Town Council, is Ordinance 2018-0, 02, and this is an ordinance proposal to eliminate the use of plastic bags for retail checkout of goods. It's the first reading.
Motion that this constitutes the first reading?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Well, I don't support the ban bag, so I don't know if I should just be opposed to it inconsistently. I mean, it'll come up again, so. Maybe that was the first reading, so I'm opposed. Oh, I thought we were going to have the presentation by the kid.
No, that's next time.
Oh, okay, all right.
The next item is ordinance 2018-03. I believe that the chairman alluded to this earlier. This essentially revokes the sunset clause provision relating to no bin, no barrel. This is the first reading.
Motion that this constitutes the first reading?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to ask Kevin McBride.
Of course.
Kevin McBride?
Director.
Hey, Director, I just had a question on the no bin, no barrel. Just wanted to know how it was doing, just for the, you
Well, it was implemented as of 1 January of, 16, I believe, and we've been running with it. My recommendation is I wouldn't lift the no bin, no barrel ordinance, and the only reason I say that is because we could potentially have an increase in the trash volume, and you know the tipping fees are going up, so it would cost us more in the long
Anything
run,
to
and that's a
help.
concern of mine.
Yep.
But other than that, that would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is the first item under the licensing section, item K1. This is the petition of Kendall Reese, doing business as Kendall Reese Gallery and Studio, 469 Wood Street. Request council consideration for holiday sales license. You have recommendations provided by the town administrator, fire, and police chiefs.
Upon those recommendations, make a motion to approve.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is item D2. This is the petition of Fernando Afonso, doing business as Central Fish Market, 465 Wood Street. Request council consideration for a vittling license. You have recommendations from the Town Administrator, Department of Water Pollution Control, and also the Chief of Police.
Motion to approve the vittling license?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Following from the same petitioner, you have a request for a holiday sales license with recommendations from the Town Administrator and Chief of Police.
Motion to approve the holiday sales license?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is from Callie Cords, doing business as Callie's Cottage Pet Boarding, 10 Hampton Road. Request for dog kennel license. You have a recommendation provided by the Town Administrator and Chief of Police.
Motion to approve the dog kennel license?
I'd like to second, but for discussion, that
Sure.
Go
I'd
ahead.
like to put a review of 6 months, given the residential area, for this council and the departments, especially community development and the compliance officer, just to give a report back, please.
So there's a motion for a 6-month grant of the license with a review at that 6 months?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, yeah.
Excellent.
Amended.
Okay, just so the council is aware, these licenses renew on May 1st.
So,
So it's
That would
going to
be
be
5 months, huh?
less than, so you'll be getting a review at that time anyway.
That's a great point.
so I would suggest we take the town clerk's advice and just make it at that time.
Okay.
So we have an amended motion and a second. Is there any
Thank
other
you, Lou.
discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I'd just like to wish all the applicants much success with their petitions, especially Mr. Afonso, who will be taking over the fish market. That was the past Nick's Fish Market and Quint's, so we wish him much luck.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Good point. Thank
Good
you.
luck.
And the next one is item D5. This is the petition of Walgreen Eastern, doing business as Rite Aid, number 10218 at 580 Metacom Avenue. This is a request for a holiday sales license. This is just new ownership. You have recommendations provided by the town administrator and chief of police.
Motion to approve?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item, the public service appointment section, you have the recommended list of special constables, private investigators, matrons, and retiree officers for 2018 as recommended by the chief of police.
Motion to approve as stated?
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And similarly, from the fire chief, you have the recommended list of special constables, fire police for 2018 also.
Which this council is direct part of, correct? Aren't we special constables?
Well, we're a special,
first
we're
one,
a special
but-
constable, but we're not fire police.
I was going to ask, please don't ask us to do that because it will not work
We're on
out
the other
well.
one, the prior one
Yeah,
that we
the
just voted on.
Although we're happy to help in any
Lou,
way.
you asking if it's a conflict for any of us to vote on?
Yeah, you wouldn't want
I've
me.
never had to step into that service of all the years I've been on the council, so I'm not sure what my...
Motion to
I've seen you direct traffic.
Oh, I could have had to, yeah.
Motion to approve the submitted list for the constables, fire, police for 2018.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next, we have the harbor master with term to expire in January of 2021. You have the request of Greg Marsili, who seeks reappointment, excuse me.
Motion to reappoint Greg Marsili as harbor master?
Second?
There was a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And you have the assistant harbor masters, David Girton, Alan Leach, Scott Marino, John Mata, William Texera. You also have additional members as recommended by the harbor master, for the most part, whose applications have come in too late for the agenda. Based upon the recommendation of the harbor master, it's suggested that you may wish to make those appointments subject to the receipt of those applications, which I believe we may have them all now. There may be one that's still outstanding. Now, in the case of Mr. Texera, he currently serves as auxiliary harbor master. There is also a recommendation that he would be promoted to assistant if the council wished to do so.
So could you give it
Did all
to me
that make
one more
sense?
time? No, it did not make sense. I'm sorry.
He's not on this
So-
list, though, right? You're
No,
basically going off
I'm
of
going-
G1D, right?
I'm going off the recommendation of the harbor master.
Which is this one?
No.
Is that the, no?
It's actually, there's a letter in there which
Okay.
follows, it follows D. It's DI.
Mr. Texera submitted a letter, right?
Oh, right,
He
right,
did,
right,
he
right.
did,
I see it right here.
yes.
Okay, yep. right.
Okay, so I believe, and I don't want to speak for the harbor master, but I did review the list. I believe he's recommending that everyone on his list be reappointed and that Mr. Texera join the group if the council sees fit. Is that
So
correct?
is there any name that is not included on the list that's in front of us that you're proposing as being appointed or reappointed or moved?
The list I provided had all the assistants from last year, plus Mr. Texera on a separate paragraph or line. A couple of the assistants didn't get them in time, so, but I think Lou has those now.
Could you tell us, so those names are here on our list, is that correct?
They're on the
This one.
they're
Yeah,
on
my
the
entire
list.
staff's on that list.
The list that came from the harbor master.
So to make it easier,
So-
the assistant harbor masters and the auxiliary, they're all the same applicants.
Yeah.
There's nobody new, except we're just going to elevate Mr. Texera from auxiliary to assistant harbor master.
That's correct.
Right.
This guy right here.
That's it.
That's really good.
There's
Is there a
no-
motion to that effect?
And so moved that we,
Second.
well, I don't want to go ahead of our town clerk, so I believe we're just doing the assistant harbor masters at this time?
Yes.
Okay, so...
So the motion is for the assistant harbor masters.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
So are you going to do then Mr. Texera separately? Is that what you were going to do? Or you just going
My,
to...
my motion was for the recommendation to elevate Mr. Texera, part of the assistant
Right,
harbor
right,
master's
right.
motion.
Elevated to,
So everything that's on G1DI is what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We already did that.
So we're on E now.
We are.
Yeah.
Gosh darn it.
Okay.
So I'm going to approve E, the auxiliary harbor masters, but what's in front of you, that would just not be including Mr. Texera because we already appointed him.
Right,
up.
right,
Yep.
right, right.
Second?
So there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And this just sort of proves the need to get those applications back to us.
That was a nice
quickly.
way of saying that, Lou. Thank you.
You notice I didn't make a comment, Mr.
Yeah,
Clerk.
I know. It's always a bit of an uphill climb. But anyway, the next one is sub-item F, the tree warden. You have the request of Stephen Saracino, who currently serves as tree warden, who would like to be reappointed, and you also have a recommendation provided by the town administrator to that effect.
Motion to reappoint Stephen Saracino.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Saraceno's with us, and I'd like to thank the administrator and Mr. McBride, the Director of Public Works, for their proactive plan working with our tree warden. I get approached a lot, and all of us do, about the aging trees. We're in a historic town with a lot of historic old trees, and the worrisome is, in the past of discussions, is Mother Nature and these frequent storms that take place in Bristol, and things happen. So the trees come down, and I get asked, is there a plan in place? Our tree warden, along with our departments, we make assessments, but again, they are historic trees. We can't just go around taking all the trees down in Bristol. But they are working on a plan. More importantly, Mr. Saraceno's relationship with the state and National Grid, talking with Mr. Saraceno, he informed me that come March, along Hope Street, National Grid will be doing their tree pruning program with the oversight of Mr. Saraceno, and also he's going to be working with National Grid's contractor over the summer throughout the town through their tree pruning program also. Why I say this is I just want to be on record that through National Grid's program, it's going to save the taxpayers in the town of Bristol and us money, not going through us, but going through National Grid. So I just wanted to make that known to the public, and thank Mr. Saraceno and the administrator and Mr. McBride for your efforts going forward with this assessment and maintenance plan.
I think one of the things to add to that is, to work with them to do like a nicer job, because if you recall, like several years ago when they first went out there to do it, we had like every tree was a V.
Or
if you
Y, yes.
Yeah,
you're absolutely-
why, yeah.
Right, yeah.
Down around the, so, I mean, that doesn't look good either for a town that's like known for its tree canopy. But I do think, and I think we brought this up a few meetings ago, in relation to the storms that we had, and if there's a way to identify some of the old trees, if they're already, like, how do we identify them early on that they're hollowed out? I think, because what's happened in some of the storms, some, dead tree that's all hollow falls, and it, like, brings the power down for several days in the downtown area. And there's got to be a way to assess that. And I'm not sure the best way to do that, but that's something that we had asked, and I believe was probably communicated via our administrator, like a few months ago when we had the power outage from the tree downtown. And that was exactly the same thing that happened during another hurricane that we had. So those are my only comments about that, but thank you for everything that you do, because it's such an important job.
That's why, you're absolutely right, Councilwoman. That's why I would
Yeah.
just like to make that public announcement to
Right.
everyone who's listening and seeing at home and here tonight, so.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item is the Bristol Housing Authority tenant position with term to expire in January of 2023. You have Patricia Sardina, who is a resident of the Bristol Housing Authority, who seeks reappointment. You have a recommendation also provided by the Executive Director of the Housing Authority in her favor.
If my colleagues, we have another applicant. We usually...
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Yeah.
We usually interview anyone of interest.
Of course.
So I would just make a motion that we she's interested, we have to interview Ms. Lombardi.
So I'll remind my colleagues, we have a special council meeting next week to talk about our 5-year capital project, and we had scheduled an earlier start time. Maybe we can offer that possibility? I know we already have a potential applicant that we're interviewing for a separate position, but
Right.
maybe that could be scheduled in at that time?
Sure.
Excellent.
Yep. What motion do you need?
So, Lou, what motion do you need on that?
You could just, to make a motion
Thank you.
to interview the new candidate.
So moved.
Second.
I thought I did, but
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
So there's a motion. Is there a second?
See, what I find is when you just talk about it, it's not really the motion, right? That's what- that's what
usually the chairman will go,
Although
is that a motion?
I wrote it down as his motion, so. You're
Ed-
going to get credit for it anyway, I already wrote it down.
So Ed made the motion, and Tim seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And then finally, you
Gosh darn
have the Board of Tenants Affairs, there's 2 positions available, and you have the application of Elizabeth Burns currently serving who wishes to be reappointed.
Motion to reappoint Elizabeth Burns.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And the first item under old business, item H1, this was continued from September 13th, and it was Councilman Stewart requesting a status update on the construction easements and final draft of the 10-yard Brook Phase 2 project.
I'm smiling because we have some good news.
Diane, you have good news for us? Talk to
Diane,
us.
please.
Thank you. I am very pleased to report that we have secured all of the easements between Garfield and Richmond, which is the first phase of the project.
Diane, would you explain to everybody what that actually means?
Oh, sure. So this is the 10-yard Brook Culvert replacement project. It travels through 35 properties between Garfield and Mount Hope Avenue. And the purpose of these easements was to work with the property owners on the restoration that would be needed to be done in conjunction with the culvert replacement project. If you recall, during Phase 1, the town contracted for all of the restoration work after the brook improvements were completed. And there was a lot of landscaping, different trees planting, lumen seeding, and a lot of iterations with the property owners at the end of the project to make sure that their yards were correctly restored. This time, we decided that it was a better approach to do that up front and to compensate the property owners so that they could do their own landscaping when the project was done.
Why is that better? I agree it's better, but
It's a lot better.
why is it better?
So it's better for a number of reasons, one of which is that people's landscaping is very important to them, as you can imagine. They've got trees and gardens and some sentimental things that they are concerned about, and we felt that there was a lot of effort between the contractor and Beta out in the field with the property owners to sometimes replant things, sometimes things got moved. People had a different vision for what they wanted their yard to look like when they were done, and so we had, a lot of time spent with the owners, property owners, I think this tree might look better over here, or whose grass wasn't growing, who had issues with
So it pretty much
specific
gives the
plantings.
property owner the
Right.
control over the restoration.
It does,
So-
correct. And they can do what they would like to do at the end. We've compensated everybody based on what they have today, and understanding that they will probably want that in the future. But it's better. I think the other thing is that, if you might recall, there was a lot of time on the completion end of the project. And I think we spent a lot of time with the contractor. And I actually went back and found some correspondence, memos and things saying, please, can we be done now? Because things were just, not totally done to everybody's satisfaction in the field. So the idea came up that we would compensate people. We will prepare the properties to allow the homeowners to loom and seed, replant their bushes, and all of that will be done by the homeowner when the project is done. So we took this last year, and I can't believe it's been a year, but we took this last year while we were working with the engineering consultant on the permitting and the final design to work with the property owners, secure these easements, and now we're ready to go to construction.
So we did all of this, you did all of this to get us to the next step, which is construction. Why are we doing this construction?
This is a neighborhood that has a lot of historical flooding, and the drainage is very poor. It's an old culvert that basically started its life as a stream or a brook, 10-year brook. It was covered over sometime, I believe, in the 70s. On a lot of properties, it's out of sight, out of mind. People don't even know they have this culvert until they get flooded. Over the years, the brook has actually, or the property adjacent to the brook on a lot of these properties has actually subsided and sunken, if you will, so it creates a dam of water, a pooling of water on the property. The brook actually blocks it because the settlement of the earth has created this. Anyway, so yes, it's a historical, heavy flooding neighborhood, and we commissioned the watershed study many, many years ago that we were fortunate enough to do phase 1 about
2001.
Thank you.
I got the timeline down.
Yeah, that was the watershed study, and I can't remember the date of the phase 1, but so we have been really, really pursuing the completion of this brook for the benefit of all of the property owners in this neighborhood, and we're
moving forward.
We're moving forward.
Finally, and talking with the administrator, like you said. In the meantime, with these easements, the permitting is done, and I know we'll be discussing the funding for it, but when it comes to drainage mitigation, I can't say it enough here in the town of Bristol, that has to be on the top priority with our infrastructure in our town for our residents and the property to keep the water moving, so.
Kudos to you, Councilman Stewart, for keeping this on our agenda. If we have supporting documentation, that comes with everything, and there's about 8 pages of, so where are we? In December, September, July, so it's excellent that we're moving to the next step.
Yeah.
This is a very expensive but very important next step. Storms are not getting weaker, they're getting stronger. More water comes down, and this will help us make it that much safer, and safety is a big concern. It's obviously impacting the neighborhoods, but getting emergency equipment when water is flooding the area. I lived on Charles Street for a few years, a long time actually, and I watched the water go through the middle of the road. Nobody could go by that. So,
And I think the other thing that I've discovered as I worked through this project is that, as I said before, people have acquired properties not even realizing that the brook was there because it's buried, it's culvert. It also does not take a straight path, and so there are several properties that Brook really snakes through and winds around, and this project will also address the capacity of the flow of the water, because the goal is to realign it and straighten it where we can so that it flows properly the way it needs to flow to accommodate the drainage.
And Diana, are we also going to help the homeowners a little bit by encouraging them to use materials that's permeable or impermeable? We want to make sure that water gets drained out properly. Sometimes we've talked about where people put a lot of cement patios out, and then you got 5 cement patios, and that water is all going somewhere. You know what I mean? It's just making sure that encouraging them to use,
Right.
materials to encourage the drainage to,
Right, and so that's
improve instead of backing it up.
Right, that's a requirement for new construction, that they use low-impact development
Okay.
and more greenery and less impervious. For this particular project, and what I worked on was replacing what's there. And we will go in, the contractor will go in and replace any hardscape, fences, sheds that have to be moved and repositioned, some brick patios, anything structural like that. It's going to be restored the way it is today. And then the compensation was given for the landscaping. So we have to really work a little bit more if people want to do something more green.
Yeah. Yep.
This is pretty much just in-kind replacement.
Yep.
So, Mr. Administrator, this is a major project that's been going on for years in the town. So, with the construction phase, I would like to I'm going to keep this going for review for our residents, once we keep going forward with this. So what would be a good timeline to continue this for a review for this council?
I think we're planning on starting activity in that area in June, so I'd say around there, June.
Want to give it a couple more months after June, so maybe the end of the summer?
June and August, perhaps.
So I'll make a motion to continue for a report and review of the project for August.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion?
If I may?
Absolutely.
I have to say, today was a great day for us. There was a lot of work, and Diane Williamson, our director, she pretty much, she was helped very little, but I know she was fair to the taxpayers, and she was fair to our homeowners, and to those residents that live there. This has been long overdue. They deserve it, and we're on our way, and I'm real excited about this project. So we're on track, and we're on course, and our schedule. Essentially, you met the timeline, and it was a lot of work. And so thank you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Diane.
Thank you.
It's nice to hear this is done. Because it's one of those projects where the bulk is done, but there's a few holdouts and hard to reach people that live out of state or whatever. That's really been, you've been going back and forth for people for a long time, so it's great to hear it's
job.
done, this phase. Now we just need all the money to finish all the work.
Can you get the money? I believe we have an agenda item coming up that speaks to that. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So we have a motion and a second to continue to August. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next item was continued from your January 10th meeting. This has to do with the textile recycling program. I believe the solicitor has additional information for the council.
I've been in touch with the principal for the company Simple Recycling. They're the ones that actually do the work, provide the pink bags. I presented to them a proposed contract. Amazingly, today I received information back from them with their remarks on my remarks. So I need to go back and forth a little bit. We're very close. I would say there are only 2 or 3 items that we need to continue to negotiate. So I would ask if you continue this for one more meeting, I'll actually have a contract for you by the next meeting.
Motion
Thank
to
you.
continue to the February 28th meeting?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And item I1 from the Director of Community Development regarding a Community Development Block Grant, DR grant application for Tanyard Brook Culvert Replacement Phase 2.
This is you again, Diane. So now we know what it's for.
Okay, so we had an opportunity to submit a grant application to the state for the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery Funds. These were funds from Sandy, Irene, and Nemo. We are much further along now with our shovel-ready plans and our easements, so the timing was right. The state had de-obligated funds from another community that couldn't spend it, so they put out a request for grant applications, and we met all the criteria. We had shovel-ready plans, we didn't have funding allocated, and we could demonstrate that we had flooding, because as we said, this is a bad drainage area, during Sandy and Irene. And I just want to give a shout out to Carol Mello, because we had to demonstrate that we had.
Who's Carol Mello?
I'm sorry, Carol Mello is the town administrator's administrative assistant. She used to work for the Director of Public Works, and one of her jobs during these storms was to document homes that received sandbags. And the files that she kept on those homes that received sandbags directly related to the flooding that we had in the Tanyard Brook neighborhood. And that was what we needed to show the state to solidify to them that we did actually, that this is a neighborhood that floods. A lot of the reports that the chiefs had were townwide, very generally, Bristol had flooding, everywhere had flooding. But I couldn't find anything specifically related to this neighborhood till I spoke with Carol about just the project and my frustration, and she said, I've got all those files, I'll go get them at lunchtime. So she brought them over, and sure enough, she had all the documentation. So I was really pleased, because we just needed the ability to make this application and at least get our foot in the door. So the deadline was last Friday. We did submit the application. The state understood that the timeline was quick and we would not have your authorization at the time we submitted, but they were fine with that. So I'm asking tonight if you could authorize the town administrator to sign off on the application that was submitted.
So moved. I was just going to say, you may have a fight for who's going to look for that one. So.
Second.
So there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? I will add my 2 cents, and this is just spectacular.
Well,
This
stay
is-
tuned, fingers crossed.
Well,
Right.
looking for the opportunity, luck is where opportunity meets preparedness.
Right.
So there was an opportunity, and you were prepared to take advantage of it. It's wonderful. So,
So we'll stay tuned. So we should know very shortly. The state, this money has to be spent if we are lucky to secure any of this funding. It is a competitive grant, so I don't know exactly what we'll end up with if we get approved for it at all. But the money has to be spent by June of next year because of the federal requirements. So they are going to really be, we'll be fast tracking this project.
we're committed to this project, and we have been.
Thank
So.
you,
I
thank you.
I think it's important to note, I know we've noted it before, but, Bristol has a great reputation, thanks to all of our department heads, Diane and everyone that you work with on the various projects, for having shovel-ready projects, having a reputation for getting the job done on budget and in the time required. And we have heard it from Senator Jack Reed, we've heard it from the Director of DEM, we've heard it from many people that, it always surprises you when you find out there's a community that just can't spend their money. They can't get it together, they can't get their plans together. And we are always ready and willing and able, and we do have that reputation. And I think, as was been pointed out by some of these folks when they've been down here, this is a competitive situation. But there's other times where somebody hasn't spent money, they need it spent, and they're like, okay, Bristol will get this done correctly. And I think that's a real tribute to all of your work. So thank you very much, because it's always, you gotta jump on these opportunities when you have them.
Bless you.
So,
Yeah.
I don't think that could have been said any better. I think that was
Thank you.
perfect. So we have a motion and a second to,
Authorize the
Off-
town administrator.
thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Next item is from my office. This is the draft budget workshop schedule for the upcoming budget cycle. I did receive correspondence today from Councilman Tiska, who informed me that he has, because of the school vacation, a problem with the week of the 26th. I did have one suggestion as how we can leave this mostly intact, and the council will have to obviously agree to the schedule no matter what. But the one possibility would be to move everything that's scheduled for the week of the 26th to the week of the 2nd of April, and then instead of having the provisional vote on the Monday, the 2nd, we would have it on the either Wednesday or Thursday of that week. That would still give us sufficient time to follow the remainder of the adoption schedule without sacrificing any of that. It's a little tighter for us to put all the paperwork together for the ads and the public hearing and all that other stuff, but it's still okay with all of the dates.
So Lou, if I understood you correctly, you're proposing that to adjust the schedule, the week of Monday, March 26th, those scheduled and those, the way they are scheduled, move
Right.
those to Monday, April 2nd,
Yes.
and then use the other dates already scheduled for the provisional vote and all the other steps that we normally take. Is
No,
that
the
correct?
provisional vote would be, because the date of the provisional vote is the 2nd now.
Right, so we
Okay,
need to
so
move
we're
that
just gonna-
forward.
We're going to basically take that week and use either the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday of that week to make up for it. And the week of the 26th, we won't have any sessions at all.
Okay.
The odd part, it would be that we would have a hiatus
Okay.
in the middle.
Which we don't typically.
Which we don't typically do. But it seemed to be the only way to leave everything intact and still have it done at the same time.
Does anybody have objection?
yeah,
To
could I
that?
just ask another question? Isn't it possible, when I'm looking at this, looking at the list, I mean, you know, we do take up a lot of these departments. And the extra nights. I mean, I think this could be done if we either started a little bit earlier each night or went like a half an hour later each night and not have to skip that week. I mean, getting into April is going to be very difficult for me because I know we have a huge project that I was hoping would have been done by then. I think that it's, you know, or even just say take like the Friday or the Saturday morning and just get that done, because when you look at the departments, like my guess, some of these are pretty short. Like, you know, some of them are pretty simple, like the boards and commissions, the board of canvassers. It is what it is. You know what I mean? I hate to say.
I agree.
You know, I mean, the debt service. I mean, we may end up with some of these already done, because they are on every night as we have time.
And then I believe Wednesday's open, right? The 28th?
No, we can't do that week.
There's
That-
nothing.
No, that's...
That whole week
there's-
has to be struck.
Yeah, that whole week is
so it'd be
out of
moved to
play,
the 4th,
apparently.
Right.
No, I'm saying instead of putting it off and skipping the week, is there a way to consolidate this into the first week? Like maybe by going on the Saturday morning, or by going starting a half an hour earlier, like at 6:30, or half an hour later? Because a lot of the departments that are in the week too are departments there's a good likelihood that we would already be taking those up anyway. Do you know what I'm saying? Like because they're on the schedule for every night, like everybody's department who's here, like, you know.
Problem starting early?
So Lou, you've scheduled, I'm sorry, I'm going to go back and say you always advertise this to allow us the latitude to talk about more if the time allows.
Well,
So-
that's the reason why it's structured the way that it is. You know, I thought about the possibility of a, you know, you could, there were lots of other ways to approach it. What I tried to do when I looked at this, I said, okay, well, we don't usually have meetings on Fridays and Saturdays, so I avoided that. Okay, you could use that Friday. You could use Saturday. Okay, that's possible. Another, this one's maybe a bit of a stretch, but one of the things that the council has discussed in the past is delegating the human resources, which takes a whole night, to perhaps another group to be named that would go over that with those applicants, and you would just budget a total as far as where the individuals would fit into that.
Well, could we set them up a separate night, like further in advance of the budget? I mean, is that possible?
Well, you don't know what the recommendations are yet.
So for myself, 6:30 would be my earliest start time, reasonable. I could do one early night, but I couldn't do consistently earlier than 6:30. For myself, I'm happy to take the extra time in those meetings during the 19th, the 20th, the 21st, the 22nd, whatever those dates are that we've already scheduled, to put the extra time in, no problem. I think, honestly, for myself, not because I don't want to give the time, but Saturdays is my family time, and I'm not willing to give that up. So, but I am willing to be here later during the week after I get out of work. So, if
I could do that. And a Friday. I don't know if you could do
I think it would be.
I could do a Friday, absolutely. Friday I could do.
I would rather do it all of that first week rather than have like a whole week off. And then,
Agreed.
And then I think it would be very difficult, and I don't know if I'll be able to participate, like, how hard, it would be very difficult for me in parts of April. I just don't know exactly when yet.
Yeah.
So-
Well, it would be basically.
Why don't we do this?
The second, third, fourth, and fifth.
So, does anybody have opposition to that proposal? And that, let's state that clear proposal that we would go, what dates are we actually saying, including that Friday?
I'm just trying to accommodate all my colleagues. I want to accommodate Mr. Tisco with his week. I respect yours when we put it out, that you're going to be busy. And then you just stated that Saturday might be iffy, so there's 3 items out there. I mean, I'll come whenever is needed. It's budget time. I just think if we're going to get it done in a week, Saturday might be a possibility. We don't want to cut ourselves short with advertising and not have enough ample time to address the needs of the budget.
Well, even if we have to go like just
So,
one day in April. right?
Yeah, so whether it be Friday night and add that, that's fine, and we usually do stay later
Right.
on the other nights.
Yeah, we do.
So we can accomplish that.
Yeah,
we do.
My pause is, if even after Friday, if we're not done, what do we do?
Then we have to schedule something into April, and Mary
For
said
one day?
One day is not an issue.
One day? All
The
right.
week was the
So as
concern
long
of
as we
what I
can-
heard.
I know I'm going
We
to
can
have
have
a
that.
project due, I just don't know when.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
You know, I'm at like somebody's mercy for that,
So
so.
for me,
Understood.
the 6:30 time
I
is
think the
okay.
6:30 would be
And the
good.
Friday.
Well, 6:30 is,
okay.
you're already at 6:30.
Oh,
Right.
I'm just-
Yeah, this was,
6:30
Right.
Friday.
So do I hear agreement for Monday through Friday of that week, and that week is the 19th? And that if additional day or was necessary, that would be April 2nd? Am I correct with that? Did I hear that correctly?
But we still already have that scheduled anyway, but that's what might have to get moved, right? Because we have the provisional budget. or
well,
whatever,
you can't,
the special meeting.
you can't continue to deliberate on I mean, when you get to the provisional budget, you have numbers
Have to have it done, right?
It has to be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
So we can't impose upon the treasurer to create the provisional budget until you make those final decisions.
Okay.
So I'm sure she would need at least one day to turn it into a.
How about this?
to a budget.
Do we all agree that we can do that week, including the Friday? And stop me anywhere you disagree with this, that we will need an extra day in April. We'll call it the first week in April. Does anybody have concern about the first? Is there a day in April that would be an issue, or can we leave that to the clerk to put that on here as an extra day if necessary? Does anybody
So it would
anybody
be
have?
2 days in April, beginning of April, be the first, the second, and then the third. Is that what you're saying?
Well, usually, the vote on the provisional budget, I'm almost afraid to say this, but it takes very, very little time because you spent the previous
Yeah.
time frame deliberating all of
Itemizing.
the questionable items, okay? So that, even if you had something to work on, it'd be like, sometimes that's a 10-minute meeting,
Right,
okay? I know, kind of knock wood on that one.
right.
Okay, but, so we could certainly do that. I mean, the other thing I should point out, if you look at the schedule, there is a gap in the first week on the Wednesday, because I was informed that the announcement for the 4th of July Chief Marshal is that day. And the reason why I didn't schedule a budget workshop that day was because I know that the council likes to participate in that activity. And
Okay.
if we did have a schedule, then it would preclude you and the administrator and anyone else that was interested in budget stuff from that activity, which is kind of nice. But I guess that date could still be used, too. Personally, I would prefer not to, and I know that the council in the past has preferred not to.
But that doesn't usually take place until like a good 8:30. We could still meet at like 6 or 6:30 and get like a department or two in. I mean, it's a shame to waste that entire night. You know? Even
That's-
if we schedule like some of the, like your departments who are always here, like, get that done. I mean,
So the question is specifically Wednesday, the 21st. What's this council's thought?
Again,
Say you-
our town clerk, who is involved, I'm just trying to accommodate everybody, because we're hearing concerns. So I thought that Mary can't do all of April, but if we schedule it like you had mentioned, Mr. Chairman, stay a little later, do the Friday evening, and then April 2nd, Lou, would be the extra day if needed, and then the important thing is now just the date for the provisional budget, and then keep the rest the same.
Yeah. Well, it can certainly follow
So- I think that would cover everybody's concerns.
it could be April 3. I don't think there's a problem with
Okay.
that.
Does anybody have issue with what was just proposed?
No, that's
that make
fine.
sense?
That works for me.
Okay.
Yep.
So that is, we need a motion to that effect.
I believe he was writing everything down
got it.
accordingly.
Yeah, I think I have it.
You want me to? So the motion is, what was presented here tonight is we're going to strike March 26th, 27th, and 28th, and we will be adding Friday, March 23rd,
Yep.
And if there is an extra day needed, would be April 2nd,
Correct.
which is a Monday, and the provisional budget
Will follow
advertised accordingly in the next couple days after that.
There's the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a discussion?
Nobody else has any days or anything?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
I will tell you that this, all the years that I've done this, I floated out to the department heads, and this is the very, very first time that nobody came back and said, "Can you change me?" So, including the solicitor. But it is what it is. Okay, the next item is our RFP number 871-2. This is the full revaluation for the townwide revaluation. You had 3 proposals received. The first was from Tyler Technologies of Moraine, Ohio, in the amount of $396,000. The second from Vision Governmental Solutions of Hudson, Massachusetts, in the amount of $411,000. And the third from Northeast Revaluation Group, LLC, from Warwick, Rhode Island, in the amount of $374,800.
Just need a motion to refer.
Motion to refer to the administrator to act in the best interest of the town.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Julie, I just had a quick question for you. I know we've been setting aside funds for this. Are we?
So the low bid of $374,000, if you remember last year, we budgeted $175,000. When I reviewed this today, it looks like we're going to be able to budget closer to 150 instead of the 175 we were originally looking at. So we'll have a little bit of savings, which is great.
And when will this start, Julie?
They'll be starting as soon as we can get the contract signed. So we're a little bit behind with the transition, and so they'll be starting work hopefully within the next few weeks.
Excellent. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
And the next item is the periodic report provided by the Alan Klepper of the Bristol County Water Authority.
Motion to receive and file.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
The next we have individual council member agenda items, beginning with the chairman.
I have nothing. Good evening, everybody.
And Mr. Sweeney.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm not ready. Just quickly, just wanted to let everybody know, on December 4th, Bristol Total Fitness, and in concert with the American Cancer Society, will be hosting Pedal to End Cancer. Archie Martin knows he's spun in it quite a bit. It's a 3-hour spin. It's from 9 to 12. It raises money to obviously go towards cancer research. And I think all of us here and out there watching tonight have all been touched by somebody who is either dealing with cancer, maybe have passed away, or struggling with it. So this is a great way to raise money for the cause. Again, it's March 4th from 9 to 12. You can go out to the American Cancer Society website and you can register there. You just show up to Bristol Total Fitness, you grab yourself a bike, you can join a team. It's a wonderful event, and I highly encourage you to do it. I will be one of the instructors actually teaching. I've been teaching for a couple years, so encourage any of my colleagues to join as well. But just wanted to make you all aware of that. And I hope everybody has a great Super Bowl. Go Patriots. Be safe. And
I said I
have a
had
good night.
nothing. My God, go Pats. Sorry, I apologize. So, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
My bad.
Mr. Tiska.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Spring's coming. This weekend is the Providence Boat Show. So if you're feeling the urge, have a walk around. It's a fun event, whether you have a boat or not, or whether you're going to buy anything or not. I want to call out one of our local businesses, Jamestown Distributors. Mike Mills and his family have owned it for years. They're a great member of our community. They have 3 high school students embedded in their business. So it's an example of, I think, what several businesses are doing in town and connecting with the high school to get students career ready and aware of what's necessary to be employable in this marketplace. I want to acknowledge Full Channel for being here. I made the switch, and so my family is watching tonight for the first time, so hello, family. And finally, we have next Wednesday a capital plan workshop, and I think it's important for the public to be aware of that. That's next Wednesday night, and it's an opportunity to understand some of the long-term priorities and investments that this town makes in several different ways. I'll leave it at that, but it's there's an opportunity to understand going into that meeting what our priorities are, so I'm sure you can see the administrator maybe for the outline at some point, and I'll leave it to him to give more details on that. But a great opportunity to get involved, a primer for our operational budget season 2, which is coming up. So with that, thank you and good night.
Ms. Perrella.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's going to be like about a month since we have till we have another council meeting, so I guess I'd say Happy Valentine's Day to people, and to many of the other President's Day and all the other events that are coming up. Also would just say good luck to the robotics state finals is coming up this Saturday. I have a couple of teams from where I work, and I know there are 2 Monhope teams in the state finals competition as well. So good luck to all of the teams on that. That's it. That's it.
Mr. Stewart.
As Councilman Tiska said, we have a capital projects meeting next Wednesday. Monday, myself, the Administrator and Director of Public Works, Kevin McBride, will have a meeting going over the 2018 road improvement plan. So look forward to that, to contribute to our colleagues of that capital plan that we're proud to keep doing every year. But with the obstacles that we state and discuss, with everything that's on our plate within the departments and here in the town, certainly we have a challenge that we'll address. Solarize Bristol. If you haven't investigated from the last program, it's ongoing right now. If you're interested in solar, next Friday, February 9th, I believe at 39 State Street, is the local office, a Sunwatt. They'll be having a coffee social hour ribbon cut-in. So if you have any questions, feel free at 10 o'clock to go to their office and go to their office and visit them anytime to get additional information and also on our town website. I'd like to thank Mike Davis, Sergeant Arms, Archie Martins, everybody who came out tonight, and everybody tuning in at home. Stay warm, be safe throughout these snowstorms that we've been having, and everybody have a good night.
Town Administrator agenda items.
As stated, budget workshop next Wednesday. We've kept in mind the needs of the community as far as what we set out to do, improve our infrastructure. We talked about Tanyard Brook, very, very important. And also another thing that's really come to light is the age of some of our critical equipment in town, and we experienced that during the last couple of storms. So that's part of our capital project that will be presented on Wednesday night. And other than that, good night.
Is that meeting? I'm sorry, just on double checking that. Is that at 6:30 or at 6?
6:30.
6:30. And we do not have executive session. We just need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Mike, there's nothing to report? Since when don't we have executive session?
I was going to say, how many